Hey friends, Ryan Smith here, the pastor at Common Thread Church. Hope you're having a great day. It is a beautiful Thursday out today. Hope you're going to be able to get out and enjoy it somehow. Hope you enjoyed Sarah's talk yesterday. I love listening to her. I know I'm a little biased in that, but I think she does an incredible job with that. So we're back in the Beatitudes and kind of wrestling with it and kind of talking about the absurdity of who Jesus is and just the things that he teaches and how crazy they are. And this is today doesn't pull back any punches, right? We're in the seventh Beatitude today, and it says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." Now, I'm going to say that this Beatitude probably causes the most stress, causes the most tension, the most pushback in our world, in Christian lives, and in everyone's life. You know, this idea of what it means to be a peacemaker, and he's not being literal, right? I mean, at least not when it really matters. Like when it really comes down to it, that this isn't a literal interpretation, right? He's not really meaning what I think he means, right? And so that's what we wrestle with. And so today, I'm not here to change your mind. I'm not here to try to convince you one way or the other, because this is something that I think is so ingrained in who we are, and it's something we personally have to wrestle with. So today, I just want you to kind of maybe chew on this, think through it, and maybe just open your eyes to wherever you fall on this beatitude. With this idea that we all have a place to grow, that we're all growing in where we are, and we're not called to believe necessarily the exact same thing, but we are called to wrestle with Jesus says, and so that's what this is about. And so I want to start with the setting with which this beatitude was given. We've talked about this before, but you can't miss this. Is that this is Jesus speaking on the side of a mountain in the Sea of Galilee area, right? But the Sea of Galilee area is really Rome, okay? And we know it kind of as Israel proper now, but this is part of Rome. This is Rome itself. This is part of the Pax Romana. If you remember, this is something that is held up among Roman history, this idea that Roman peace ruled for 200 years, that at this time, supposedly the world had never experienced such peace that Rome had brought about. But really, Pax Romana was peace by victory. That was another saying they had, this idea that we will have peace because we will destroy anyone who doesn't believe what we believe, that we will take care of, that we will slaughter, that we will enslave, that we will shut them up with the most brutal military force this world has ever seen. And so for them, it was peace by war, and it's kind of their own version of just war, right? Their idea that we will have peace by slaughter. And so Jesus comes into the picture, and he carries this name of king, this title of king. And he's bringing about this new kingdom. And so, it's easy to understand that people were expecting him to be this military guy, to take over and to fight Rome, and because of all the things that they had done to Israel and all the things that they were doing to its people. Surely this is what God had brought about, that David reincarnate is here. And so you can understand them thinking this way. But I want us to see that throughout Jesus' life and his ministry, that his actions were nonviolent, that they were peaceful, that he wasn't combative, but he was combative, right? But not in the way that people expected. And so I want us to look at his major tactic, right? His major tactic was to use people, to have his own army, if you will, his disciples. And once he prepares his disciples, he sends them out. There's this passage where he sends them out. He sends out the first 12, and he makes this statement to them. And I don't want you to miss this statement. He says this: "I am sending you out like sheep among wolves. Therefore be as shrewd or wise as snakes and as innocent as doves." And so Jesus' life and his tactics, they say that we're not going to be replacing one system of military and combat with our system of military and combat. He says we're going to be replacing it with something totally new. And as a matter of fact, I want you, as my army, I want you to go out as sheep. You're going to be going into a world full of wolves, that they act like wolves, they fight like wolves, they think like wolves. But you are going to be sheep, and you are not to act like them. You're to be as wise as a snake, but as innocent in your actions as a dove. There's a choice that when you walk into this world, that you're choosing to be one of my people, which is you're going to be like sheep. That's tough, right? That's hard to wrestle with. What does it look like for a sheep to walk into the middle of a den of wolves, right? I mean, it doesn't make sense. It's that absurdity, right? But for us, we have to wrestle with this beatitude, that we can't just push it away and say that he didn't mean it. We don't have to, but he says that blessed are the peacemakers. And so for us, we have to say, what does that look like for us today? Because let's be honest, we live, most of us here in America, we live in a world where we are the superpower. We are the Rome of the day. Now, we're not as brutal. It depends who you talk to in some eyes, but we're the ones who spend the most money on our military. We're the ones that have the largest army. We're the largest. We spend more money than the top two countries combined, right? Like, so for us to read Scripture, we have to recognize that we're actually reading this Scripture through the lens of Romans, not as the lens of Christ's followers back in the day. And so I say that just to say that we have to look at this in a way that challenges us. What does it mean for us in our situation to be peacemakers? And there's lots of ways that you can think about this and wrestle with it, and it comes on your own level, this idea that one, what does it mean for you to have peace with God? One, what does it mean to have peace with yourself, maybe? What does it mean to have peace with creation, right? That we're to be at peace, not at war with creation, with peace with others around us. And then even, what does it look like for us to have peace with the world? And so, wrestling with this word peacemaker, the first thing we think is, does this mean non-action? Does it mean that I don't do anything? Am I a doormat? Do I get pushed over? We talked about this before and how Jesus introduces a third way type of thinking. But I want you to hear that peacemaker does not lack action. Look at what Jesus did. Look at what Gandhi does. Look at what Martin Luther King Jr. did in his life. They were non-violent, but they were full of action. As a matter of fact, they caused people to change because of their different way of looking at it. And Martin Luther King Jr. Has an incredible quote where he calls out the ones who are trying to be like Christ, but they're not doing anything. They're just sitting there. And so there's a letter that he wrote from the Birmingham jail written in 1963 that I want to read to you. It says this: I must make two honest confessions to you, my Christian and Jewish brothers. First, I must confess that over the past few years, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is not the white citizen's counselor or the Ku Klux Klan clanner, but the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods or direct action, who paternalistically believes he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by a mythical concept of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait for a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of good will is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. So even from Martin Luther King's stance, there was a call to action. There was a call to be active and to have a place in this kingdom where you fight, but you don't fight in a way that the world is ready for you to see this. It's this idea that we're not to perpetuate this cycle of violence or to install our own system, right? That we're just going to run, but it's going to look exactly like it. It's just we're going to be in place, so it's going to be better, right? So today, being a peacemaker means not playing the way the world plays. And so like today in America, right, it comes down to black or white. It comes down to red or blue, right? There's always these two sides, it seems like today. And the idea is that to be a peacemaker, it's not that you stand on one side and say, here's how it is, because the other side can look and say, well, here's how it is, and this is what you should believe. And I've heard devout Christians on both sides say, how can you follow God and be on that side, right? To be a peacemaker means that you're not on either side. It means that you stand in the middle and you say there's another way. There's a third way. There's a different way than the Pax Romana. There's a different way than just war. There's a different way to come about this. It's Jesus's peace that he speaks about, that he shows us, that we're called to wrestle with that, and not in what the world says and how we're to rule or think about this world. And so I wanted to close with just, I found these kind of interesting practical ways to maybe think about how do I become a better peacemaker? What are some things I can actually do? And so I found this list that says how to change the way we think or assess things. And so the first one is this. is that you get rid of misreading, and instead you think you're thinking the best of people, right? Instead of this idea, or not misreading, a mind reading, right? Is that when we see somebody talking and they disagree with us, we think we read into what they're saying, right? But instead of us mind reading what they're trying to say, maybe we give them the benefit of the doubt. That we start with the best and who they are. The other one is overgeneralizations versus specific conviction, right? This idea that when I speak, that I don't just paint this broad swath with these statements, but I confront specific things that are going on, and I confront specific people, that I find ways to speak in those specifics as opposed to overgeneralizations. The other one is the idea of, instead of threatening to leave, that I have a threat of commitment, right? And not a threat, a promise of commitment. That if I don't get my way, I'm going to leave the country, or if we're going to quit this relationship, or we're going to do whatever it is, we're going to walk out. Because the idea of being a peacemaker means that I'm here through the thick and thin. The other one is careless speech or emotive language versus peaceful words, right? The idea of what words I choose and how important they are, and that instead of using words that just are flippant and carefree, that I choose words that show that I love, that I care. And the last one is impulsive acts versus thought through responses, right? This idea that before I speak, a peacemaker is one who thinks through what they're saying and is not just one that flies off the handle. As a matter of fact, I was tempted with this just minutes ago. Right as I was getting ready for this, someone sent me a private message on Facebook. I don't know him. Actually just became friends with him, and pretty, trying to do it in a brotherly way, but really saying, hey, what about, calling me out on a few things that I don't even know this person. And I was getting ready just to write back a quick response like, oh, that's that's not what I'm even talking about right now. And so that idea to think through what it means to be a peacemaker, and that our words are ones that are changing people, not just being combative. So that's a lot to throw out, a lot of things to think through, just some thoughts. And I just want to say this, wherever you fall in this beatitude, you need to hear this, is that if you claim that you are a child of God, you must be a peacemaker. And for each one of us, we need to wrestle with what that means in our lives. So may we be people who seek the absurdity in our lives by refusing to perpetuate the cycle of violence and literally bring peace to this world. Have a great day. Grace and peace.